because of the physical nature of my occupation, I might have to change that. Your social life changes. I can't do the sports that I once was able to, due to you know, the skin being burned and the sensitivity of the skin. There's a lot of things involved with on a personal side of being burned. Fire is one of those things that you think it's controllable and it can't really injure you. Fire has damaged me for life, and in fact I will continue to probably live with the fire for the rest of my life.
It's funny, people, I look at it and I call it the it's not going to happen to me syndrome. People believe their lifestyle is great, so they won't have a fire. Statistically, though, it shows that most people will experience fire throughout their life. Not all rescues are successful. We've had several instances where people have not made it out. The tragic ones are children. They're helpless. They rely on their parents and adults to take care of them. Some calls, they stick with you a long time.
In a high-rise, it's very, very important to know what to do. A lot of people tend to think that in a high-rise building it's somebody else's responsibility to know how to get out of the fire. Well, if there's a fire in this high-rise building, the janitor is going to tell me what to do, or the superintendent's going to tell me what to do, or the fire department is going to tell me what to do. Well, what happens in the high-rise fire, by the time the fire department gets there, many times it's too late. So you have to take your own responsibility.
Finding a person too late, it really affects you. I've often said to people when we're out talking to them that it doesn't matter how well trained and equipped the fire department is. If we get there too late, none of it means anything.
Most fires and most fire injuries could be prevented. Unfortunately, people don't take fire and fire alarms seriously enough.
People tend to ignore fire alarms, especially in public environment, because either they decide to ignore or deny the situation because they feel it may be a false alarm and they don't want to overreact.
When the fire bells go off in high-rise buildings, most people tend to think it is just a joke or another false alarm. They don't take it very seriously at all. What they have to realize is that the fire alarm system, that's the first indication to the people that there's a problem within the building.
It was our fifth call to that high-rise. We responded as if it were a true fire, and lo and behold, when we got to the front of the building, we were met by the superintendent, and her eyes were big and bug-eyed. I knew right away that this was not a false alarm, and she said there was a fire up on the 5th floor, and I can remember to this day it was the 5th call that night to this one high-rise, and yet the 5th time was a fire, and someone died in the fire, as a matter of fact.
Ignore fire alarms? Well, just take a look at me.
In a high-rise building, everything is compartmentalized. You have all the rooms are completely separate. It's like a honeycomb. The fire doesn't go from one apartment to another. You got cement on top of you, you got cement below you, cement on each side. So you don't have that fire going from one room to another, but you do have problems with the smoke.
Smoke travel is the biggest killer. Apartment buildings have to have dampening devices. They're made very, very safe to prevent the spread of smoke and fire. And all that is because of the building code and the fire code.
If you have fire doors, of course, that helps stop the fire from coming across. If you have smoke detectors, gives you some more extra warning. Why do you think when nobody dies in school fires? Why do you think?
Because people in schools have a plan. When there's a fire, they all go to their meeting place.
All right.
At schools, you practice, and at in apartments, people don't really practice.
I think everyone should learn about fire education, children and adults. And it's important because a life is important. And if you can teach children about fire safety, teach adults about fire safety so that any life can be saved, that's important.
One thing people can do to educate themselves in high-rise fires is to know the building, get information from your local fire departments. They have excellent videos out, brochures, that can help you survive a high-rise fire. The big thing is education. Learn about your building and learn how to survive.
No matter where you're located within that floor, within that structure, you should be able to kind of count the doorways or how many turns there are to the stairwells.
Whenever I go into a building, I automatically look at where the exits are. If I'm going in there with my family, I point out where I want to meet them. It's a kind of a thing that happens very quickly. You can do that easily. And once you get used to doing that, it's like second nature.
Even if you are in a very high building, it's very dangerous to use the elevator in case of a fire. Unfortunately, there seems to be still some people that do not know about that and will make an attempt to use the elevator to go down to ground level when the alarm rings. It's something very dangerous. An elevator is built in a long shaft, an elevator shaft that goes all the length of the building. What is dangerous is it is like a chimney. It brings all the smoke from the level where the fire starts, and that's why it's so dangerous. If you get in an elevator, it's like getting inside a chimney. So you couldn't survive that.
Most people die from smoke inhalation. That's how they die. People don't even see fire. A lot of people tend to think that, I'm not worried about the smoke. If there's a little bit of smoke, I'll just hold my breath and I'll run through it. Well, you can't do that. It doesn't work like that.
What feeds the fire is oxygen. The fire consumes the oxygen. The patients who are trapped in the burning building have no oxygen. They also succumb because of asphyxiation. Those patients that don't die on this scene may die shortly thereafter from carbon monoxide poisoning. The smoke particles that they breathe in can carry a number of different toxins which can cause a lot of damage to the lungs and lining of the upper and lower airway.
The carbon monoxide stops you from thinking. And you get some nitrogen oxide in your eyes and the nose and throat, and that turns into an acid, and that really burns. And then you get carbon dioxide, and it's a stimulant, and it starts you breathing really fast and rapidly, and next thing you know, you're breathing more carbon monoxide in, and it stops you from thinking even faster. So you have a problem in this type of environment. You have to be ready.
Some people are of the belief that as soon as the alarms ring in the building, the fire department is automatically notified. In most cases, that's not true. Unless the building is monitored by an alarm company, the fire department has no knowledge of the alarm. Someone has to call.
You're going to get a pretty good response from the fire department. What most people think is they panic. They think, wow, I got to get out of here. The first thing you should do is once the building goes into alarm, you should feel your door.
See if it's hot. If it's not, crouch low. Open the door slowly. Look out into the hall. If there's no smoke in the hallway, then get the occupants of your apartment together, leave, bring your keys, close the door behind you. Find a stairwell that's free of smoke. Don't ever take an elevator out of a high-rise. Should the stairwell be clear of smoke, proceed down and out of the building. If on your way out you can't find a stairway that's clear of smoke, return to your apartment. Call the fire department if you have a 911 system. Notify them that you're trapped on that floor, your apartment number, and they'll get to you. But don't try to go through smoke.
The odds of surviving in an apartment from a fire are very, very good. The building is made out of cement. The only thing that burns is the furnishings inside.
Once you're in your apartment, you can use wet towels around the base of the door to stop the smoke from seeping in. You can also tape the seams of the door with tape. Also, you can tape around vents. If you see smoke coming in any heating vents, you can tape those up.
One thing that is used quite often to protect you from smoke if you're at a window area is what we call a smoke tent. A smoke tent is quite simply made by taking a blanket, putting it over your head when you're at the window. You open the window, and with the blanket over your head and your head out the window, what will happen, the smoke tends to travel over top of the blanket and out, and it gives you fresh air coming in from below. Without the smoke tent, the smoke tends to just come around your head completely, and fresh air is very difficult to get.
What you want to do is go over to your window and actually signal out of the window. You never want to break the window. In the event that you would go to your window and just break it, if the smoke from the lower floors were to start drafting up, it could actually kill you, where you would be a little safer within your room if you just left your window intact.
People leaving stairwell doors jammed open. It makes it cooler on the hall in the summertime. A lot of high-rises aren't air-conditioned. But leaving those fire doors open, if you have a fire on a lower level, then that hallway will become full of smoke.
During the Forest Laneway fire, there was an unusual amount of smoke in the staircase, and this was due to the fact that the tenant of the apartment of fire origin left his apartment, leaving his main door open. By leaving his door open, it allowed the smoke and the fire to burn all his apartment, but to go in the corridor and the staircase.
They were killed by the smoke from a fire that started in a couch on the 5th floor. The poisonous fumes got out when the door of the burning unit was left open. The building was not equipped with self-closing doors.
The occupants who died, the 6 of them were found in the 2 staircases, and they all died not because of fire, but because of the smoke.
Keep the doors closed. Keep the doors closed, and keep the doors closed again. I must re-emphasize, it's very important. If you don't do that, you'll have smoke going from one level to another quite readily.
We responded about 4:30 in the morning to an apartment flat. When we arrived, we were told that there was a baby still inside of the apartment. The firefighters were trying to make entry through the front door, and they were having a lot of difficulty. So another firefighter and myself, we looked up, we looked at a window, and we thought that that's probably where the bedroom was. So we got a ladder, and we were able to get up to the window. We broke the window, we went in, and it was black, couldn't see anything. And I remember feeling around the room, and I felt the crib, and couldn't see it. And I reached in, and I felt the baby in the crib. And when I touched him, he just whimpered. That's all he did. So I picked him up, and I handed him to the other firefighter out on the ladder and brought him down. This little guy, he was only 8 months old, and my own son at the time was 11 months, so it really affected me emotionally, To this day, I said what gave that little baby a chance was his bedroom door was closed. The living room in the apartment was gutted. The mother couldn't get to the baby for the smoke, but that door was closed, and I think that gave him the time that he needed to survive.
If you're going into a stairway and there's smoke in there, we don't want you going up the stairs to the roof. A lot of people think that if they go to the roof, they'll be rescued from the roof with a helicopter. Well, first of all, the smoke goes up, and if you're going up, you're going to be in trouble.
In most buildings in North America, most residential, office, or hotel buildings, there is no access to the roof. There is often no door to the roof, in fact, and when there is a door, it's usually locked, and no one has the key except the superintendent of the building.
So if you go up there, you'll be stuck at the top of the stairway. And don't think the helicopters, as I said, are going to go and get you, because by the time the helicopters come around, it'll be too late. And most places don't have helicopters to start with. Smoke goes up, you go down.
Should you have a fire, say, in your apartment, your unit itself, and you have to go through the smoke to get out, what we recommend is to stay low. Get right down and crawl on the floor. Smoke, hot gases, they all rise to the ceiling. Down low, your visibility will be better. The air will be cleaner. and it would be a lot cooler down there. So stay low, crawl under the smoke, and get out that way if you really have to.
Get down there for 3 good reasons. You can see down there, you can breathe down there, and it's much, much cooler down there. That's what's going to save you. Many lives are lost each year to fires because people don't know what to do. They don't think it's going to happen to them. Everybody thinks it always happens to somebody else. Well, it's not like that. It happens to many, many people every year. And you have to be ready to know what to do in case of a fire, how to get out of a fire.
As a matter of fact, especially in the primary gauge, you have a lot of children that don't talk to their parents don't talk to them about escape routes, about a meeting place. And when they go home from school, they come back the next day really excited because they have now a plan. And that's the way to get out, is to have a plan.
It's important, first of all, to know what is the fire procedure, what is the evacuation procedure of your building. You should be aware of these little signs that are usually posted in different areas of the building, either close to the elevators or close to your door or by the pull station.
Fire escape plan is developed by the people who live in the unit, for their unit. And basically it's a plan to escape a fire, an emergency.
You have to practice it. That was one of the most important things. People don't think, well, I don't need to practice this. I know what I'm doing. I've been living here for 10 years. I know how to get out of my own house. Sure, they know how to get out of their own house when there's no fire there. But when there's a fire, the carbon monoxide stops you from thinking. Then it stops you from breathing. So make a plan, practice the plan, know what you're doing, take responsibility for yourself.
It's also important to decide with your family where you will meet in case of a fire and to practice that. In many fires we have seen families separated and then one of the adults going back in the building looking for a child that was already out. That's something that should never happen. You should never re-enter a building in fire.
But a meeting place is important because if the family members aren't there, then that would trigger you to notify the fire department that I have people missing.
In a high-rise situation, you may have an elderly person that actually hears a fire alarm, but they're apprehensive about actually leaving their apartment because they're afraid that some other people outside may actually prey on them when they actually leave. So they're apprehensive about leaving, even though they know the building is into alarm. Small children don't have the mechanisms to actually escape on their own, so they're very much relying on an older person, an adult, a parent, or a babysitter to actually remove them from the area of an emergency.
Seniors or people with mobility problems should be registered with the fire department. It could be somebody with mobility problems, or it could be somebody with visibility problems. Another thing those people can do is have a buddy system, so that when something does happen, your buddy can come down and help you out. In other countries, they're more aware. There's a better education system. People take it more seriously. In Scandinavian countries, death rates are quite a bit lower. In Japan, it's a serious business if you have a fire down there.
If you have a fire in your home, it's like a criminal thing. You're shunned by your neighbors and friends. It's like, oh God, because if you have a fire in your home in Japan, the whole street can burn down. Well, it can happen here too. I mean, if you're real close to, like if you're down in downtown in a major city, if your home catches fire, you know, you could end up taking out 2 or 3 of your neighbors as well.
No, the general public always assumes that fire is going to happen to someone else, someone who's careless, someone who does something stupid, and the sad fact is it can happen to you or I.
It's sort of like, oh, I had a fire, I guess I better get a smoke detector. I don't know how many times we go into places and you look up and there's no smoke detector there, or there's a smoke detector, it's melted, and there's no battery in it. That happens all the time, all the time.
The lesson to be learned from all of this is that we have to change our way of thinking. If we're going to reduce our death rates, if we're going to reduce the loss of lives and the loss of property, we have to change our outlook. We have to address it seriously. It's an education problem that needs to be addressed.
Years ago when I taught in North Vancouver, a student of ours died. She was about 10 years old, I think. We had taught fire safety as we taught it in those days, but I guess not practicing it enough and not really having it ingrained in her mind. She lost sight of where the door was, and they found her just feet from the door from smoke inhalation. So it was really, really quite dramatic. And I think from that day on, my views on fire safety changed, because it can happen to anyone.
They may be visiting neighbors, they may be going to the dentist, attending a sporting event, going to the hospital, visiting seniors. They may just live there. Everyone, at some time, deals with a high-rise building.
I'd just like to ask every parent to make sure that they have an escape route with their children, make sure they have a meeting place and practice it, and have your smoke detectors working. That's the first key to getting out of there. If you can get out before it gets out of hand, who knows, maybe we'll save 1 or 2 lives.
Now that I've been burned, I have that much more respect for fire. I didn't realize at the time how much damage it can do and the long-term, really long-term effects of fire on the body. I'll have to live with this basically for the rest of my life.